The technical part is now figured out. Let us begin with some sense finally. So, today's topic is the category management, and it is one of my favorite topics. I'm really happy to introduce our partners. The partners are the company of Procurement Central from the United Kingdom. Together, we've invented this project, and the director and the head of this company is Mr. Stephen Wills. So we are really happy that you've joined us tonight, and we will give you the floor now. You will be able to tell us whatever you want. From our side, from Kiev, we've got two people, the representatives. If you don't know, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Marina Trepova. So I'm the co-founder and the managing director and the coach in the IPSM company. And also I'm the tutor in Ukraine of the Royal Institute on Procurement and Delivery SIPS, that is Charter Institute of Procurement and Supply. And the topic we will be speaking about is directly worrying for me and exciting for lots of people, and it is gaining more and more interest in Ukraine. That is why we've chosen this topic as one of the first ones. So I'm happy to introduce from our side, Alena Kuramshyna, who is our like-minded person, the co-author of the coaching programs and a very successful procurement director of the Intech company. This is the structure of the SKM holding. So Alena will tell a couple of words about herself on her own, of course. Alena, please, the floor is yours. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to welcome you here, Marina. You've said a lot already. I can only add that I am already for 3 years together with Marina, successfully conducting trainings and workshops on category management. Okay, thank you so much. So, in fact, we will be speaking about that, and Alena will share her experience. Stephen, now I'm giving the floor to your team. Would you please tell about yourselves, about the company, and would you please tell about the speakers? Would you introduce the speakers?
Только включите микрофон, пожалуйста.
But do not forget to turn on the mic, please.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And delighted to be here. And as Marina has said, on behalf of IPSM and Procurement Central, we welcome everybody. It's great to have so many people joining us today. As mentioned, I am Steve Wills of Procurement Central, and I'll be with you for 90 minutes on this fabulous international roundtable event on the necessity of category management in real life business. So this is the first of our trinity of procurement mastery events, along with outsourcing and supplier relationship management. Along with my esteemed colleagues, Debbie, Marina, we have our distinguished speakers, John, who will say hi in a moment, Alena, and supported, of course, by our translators. It's worth just mentioning at this introduction that we do provide solutions to supply chain and procurement teams in our training and consultancy that provide deep expertise with certainly 2-day events, accredited events, on the 5-step successful category management approach. So if you listen today and you think this is definitely something you want to get involved in and you definitely want to know more of, do contact us because this is exactly what we do. We work with companies to provide these solutions. So we know the event is being recorded, so we will send that to you afterwards. And of course, you can play that to all your friends. You can show all your friends and your family that you've been on this call today and let everybody know about category management. John, maybe you should just say hi.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Pleasure to speak to you this afternoon.
And John will introduce himself, or I'll introduce him formally a little bit later. And Debbie, my colleague Debbie. Maybe
hello. Hi, Nice to kind of virtually meet everybody.
So we are, the three of us are in the UK, and you know that the UK, it's always raining and it's always miserable with cloud and rain, particularly this time of year. But we're just very happy to be with you on this call talking about category management. Today, more than ever, category management delivers value for money and assurance of supplies. This is why we've decided to host this event today. Now is the time to write your category management plans and update them, obviously after listening to our two speakers and our experts. Make sure your forecasts and your plans consider global disruption and risks, and consider how you manage some of the big uncertainties that exist. Political uncertainty, changes across Europe and Asia, and of course, a pandemic, which has been unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. They've all disrupted supply. This just shows you why procurement and category management as a philosophy is very much front of mind. And it's, of course, not just a process. Debbie, maybe you could just take it on from there.
Yes, thanks, Steve. Yes, I would just like to echo Steve's words about procurement really being front and central at the moment. We've had lots of issues come to the fore with the pandemic that we're all experiencing. A couple of examples that I can think of are the issues with PPE, the supply of PPE on a global basis. And I'm sure it's the same for you, but we experienced over here in the UK a lot of media going, why haven't we got it? Why can't we get it here quicker? All of these things. But then when you looked at the actual numbers and some of the detailed information, then it was something like 79% of the air transport is done in the cargo holds of passenger planes. And during the pandemic, there were no passenger planes. So it's all very well for people saying, you know, why don't you guys do a better job getting this stuff here? But there are unforeseen issues like that, like suddenly all the passenger planes stop flying. So the logistics is completely different. And I think category management can really help with that, because category management is moving from a reactive approach to a much more strategic and planned approach, where we're looking as well for business continuity and contingency plans. So maybe that is going to help for some of these unforeseen disasters. So yeah, I would echo what Steve said. And, you know, researching the market is a key piece of that. I think, you know, we have suffered as well generally in not understanding enough about global markets and what's going to impact them and what the main risks are. And that is a key part of starting off your category strategy, is doing some market research and market engagement. So yeah, all the more important. And also, as Steve said, you know, if anybody needs any help, then we're certainly willing to help with even things like doing the market research, helping to write category strategies, giving advice and coaching and mentoring, those kind of things.
Indeed. Indeed, we've got a lot of experience, and we're very happy to share that with you. Thank you, Debbie. So I'm going to return you now to Marina, who's going to introduce our first speaker to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you so much, Debbie, that you've shared your thoughts, and all together, they're really, well, in the total resonance with us. So that is why we are together conducting this webinar together. So I totally agree with my colleagues that category management is one of the tools now which can really rise some procurement and help us achieve a different level. All of the tools which were listed by my colleagues will fill up with sense whatever you're doing, and will introduce this desirable additional value added, which we are speaking about. And those are not just words, those are not just papers and not just strategies which are then put on the shelf. This is really a kind of a document, a guideline, according to which you're going along together with your team. What's the most important? You're not on your own, but you're working together with your team and achieving huge and high results. That is why tonight I introduced and invited Alena, because Alena has a huge experience. Together with her team, we have begun the project on the training and implementation of category management, and she will share the success stories which her team was capable to achieve, and she will tell which issues they faced or which problems they faced, what they achieved in the end of the day. And of course, we will be able to work with different category strategies. We are providing different services in this sphere. We can totally prepare the whole strategy or just to help implement them and to lead you along the way, which, well, I can't say it's so complicated. I can't say that it's too simple, but still we are helping to implement it into life, and we are providing the comprehensible support and help to launch the processes and the changes in your companies. I give the floor to Alena now. Alena, would you please share how it was working at yours? Would you share what was successful there? What we should pay attention to? Where do we have some maybe underwater stones in the implementation, in the development of the strategy? Thank you. Thank you, Marina. It's so pleasant for me to see those invitations. We have something to be proud of, but we have some room for improvement. I will support my colleagues from the UK and Marina that category management is the new opportunity for the business. And first and foremost, this is an opportunity to be flexible, dynamic, and to take certain tools in the certain category, because out of what I have seen, the common templates, the standards, the procedures are not working anymore, taking into consideration what is happening in the world, taking into consideration the current situations. And category strategy is the document which is more flexible, more dynamic. So I will begin with the following, just to understand where I'm working at and which strategies we have worked at. I'm the representative of the Intech company. It is part of the investment company UMG Investments, which owns the assets in the extraction. This is clay extraction. It has assets in the processing of methane into electrical energy and ash into microsphere, and also the production of ammonia sulfate and other works we are providing. Intech company, it has also lots of directions, both the railway logistics and explosions and the products for the metallurgy and the port logistics. The procurement department of Intech directly is the department which is centralizing and consolidating the management of all of the procurement and all of the other resources and assets. I'm the head of this department. So a couple of words about myself, about my experience maybe, and then how we've implemented, according to the category strategy, the equipment and the assets on extraction. Marina, would you show the next slide? I will tell everything in more details. I am for 13 years in different procurement spheres. That was telecommunications and production. Can we see the next slide, Marina? No, so far I can see the first slide only. Everybody sees the first slide only? Just the first slide, sorry. Okay, then, just a moment.
Вот, все, есть.
Yes, now it's working, right. So, I've been working in the telecommunications, in the production or manufacturing. That's the company of Intech and the elevators, which are well known in Ukraine, in IT companies. So the experience and the necessity of category management was seen even then in all of the companies, and partially some of the tools were used as well. But only in the company of UMG, we've directly begun the implementation of the category strategy, how it is represented now for 6 years, taking the top positions, and all the rest can be read out loud in the slide. I have some experience in the project management, I have some experience in the implementation of the processes, automation, and so on. Let's about the most interesting, the next slide. So why did I choose this strategy? Because we consider it to be the most successful. It was the first one. This is the biggest group of expenses which we have at our enterprise after the materials, which is a very important category, because when we began the implementation, it was not manageable. And we had lots of limitations and restrictions we faced, and which we just could not get rid of. So what was the the group of special equipment? I tried to show it with an image. This is the open extraction. We can see excavators and trucks. There are bulldozers and graders and other specialized vehicles which are used in this method. What was the task of the strategy? It was the task to develop the optimal approaches to the procurement, to improve the quality of the procurement processes in the line, and to get to know how to properly use the TCO calculation. If you don't know, this is the total cost of ownership, and to use it to understand which equipment at which land plot and where can be used best of all, and also to use it to compare the demand and between different manufacturers, not only in the price, but also knowing the price of one unit and what it can give in the end in the product which we are manufacturing or extracting. The aim of the strategy were the following. We wanted to get to avoid the dependency of one supplier, because when I came, we had the only supplier who was defined as the main supplier. There were not sufficient arguments, so the competitive environment did not exist at all. So we wanted to have the share of the manufacturers 60 to 30 to 10. I will tell you later why we decided to see this ratio. We wanted to decrease the expenses and losses for the procurement and to have saving of $600,000 a year, the part for the procurement of the vehicles and part for the maintenance, to decrease some losses in the process, the timely delivery and supply according to the manufacturing program, because it's important for us when the season is beginning to have all the vehicles accessible, and to decrease the overall TCO, total cost of ownership, to find the efficient models which we will be able to use and which will provide the best result ever. And also we were working on the specifications and on the nomenclature guidelines which we've got and which we're using. I will now tell you about the outcomes and why it was important, and why, from the perspective of the strategy, it is working in each tender procedure. Our technicians are working with our strategy, and we consider it to be a huge achievement, because we couldn't even prove before why we need to take this or that manufacturer, and why in this or that way there should the bids go on, the choice of the manufacturer or the supplier, the maintenance, and so on. The next slide, please, and I will show you in the figures what was in the end of the day. We found out that we could achieve savings. We consider it to be substantial, even colossal and interesting, because since 2017, when we began to use certain aspects of our strategy without writing it down, up to now, we've saved approximately $1 million. What else is interesting? We definitely have now competitive and reliable manufacturers in each of the units of the names of the equipment which we have. We've got several still units of equipment which we have left. We are still dependent on one and only supplier because of the technical specifications which we need in this and very unit of vehicles or equipment. But still now we have a very nice competition created, which gives us the opportunity to decrease losses and expenses, the opportunity to annually, knowing that the market of equipments has the annual increase and rise, we still cope to procure in a more efficient way than in comparison with the last year. We've managed to implement the calculation of TCO of the whole park of equipment. We're using it for the whole life cycle of the vehicle or any other equipment. The vehicle's life cycle is 4 years, other equipment 5 years. And we would like to calculate it now and to see the factual expenses. We're using it since 2018. So in 2020, it is 2 years of statistical data which we have gathered and collected. And I may say that the solutions which we have taken according to the strategy by the calculations of the TCO, in fact, they really were totally reasonable. Why did we take the rule on this percentage ratio of the suppliers? We decided not to get back to the dependency on one and only supplier, not to give more than 60% of special equipment which we have to one person or to one enterprise, even if it is economically profitable, because we understand that only the competition, as for now, and mostly the competition, gives us the opportunity to decrease the price, the cost of our ownership of one unit. And we are ready, we are considering various models. Somehow it can be 50-50. Sometimes we have the ratio of 40 to 60 and so on and so forth. 10% is left always for the opportunity to implement a new supplier at some category to some category where we have 2 players only. But for ourselves, we've also taken within the category strategy, as we understand that a huge number of equipment is on the market, and our wish to work on the competition can lead to the situation when we can just get really different sets of equipment, and we won't get the savings on consolidation, on the service, on the procurement of spare parts, and so on. So this is a very important rule we're having now as well. What else do we have in the end? We have a competitive specification. Before that, we had certain print screens with specifications from the supplier, but now we have the nice and working technical specifications practically for each and every unit of the procured equipment. And we definitely have the new rules, the criteria of choice and selection, and the ratio of volumes, what I already mentioned above. And when we take the decision, we look at the share of the park of the manufacturer in our overall. And according to the tender committee, which is working at us, takes a decision to choose this or that model for the further year, for the next year. We consider that this is an achievement because now one of the most pleasant points when the main engineer got the latest equipment we've procured, he sent us a huge gratitude, and he said that he was happy to work in the same team with us. So when we came, there was a rule that the main model of the equipment is defined by technical experts only, but now we are working in the same team together, and it worked out because in fact, we decided to look through the categories. We began to understand which issues are there, and we decided to use the tools which are used in the category management. First, they are not declared, not written down, not noted down, but when we note it down, it has become a postulate which is taken when we make any decision. And also, of course, I'd like to mention that the category strategy is not some stable and stagnated document which we have written down and it's not moving and we are not paying attention to it. And that's it. We've written it down for 5 years and forgot about it. No. It needs that we need to update it, to review it. We need to calculate the savings. We need the team to collect together and to see where we had certain errors and mistakes, to introduce adjustments. And of course, we should improve it to get even higher profits. And I will remind you that for me, perfectly, this is an opportunity to be flexible and dynamic in the world where we are living now. And it is a very critically important thing. Marina, the last slide of mine is the slide where I will tell that not everything was so simple and that we got some lessons out of it, which we faced, as we did not begin to work instantly in the tandem with the technical experts. We did not instantly come to the situation where we were listened and heard, that we were perceived. First, they did not consider us. First, they looked with the position, what can you, the procurers, tell? But the first and the most important rule, which I'm using in my life and which is the key one for the category management, even with Marina and our coaching, we even invented a 0 stage. Everything begins with is the team. What's important for the team? Transparent and comprehensible communication. And also it is important to have transparent and comprehensible communication at the market. I will tell you why, because before that, we've got lots of tender procedures when we invited the participants and they didn't have feedback. Then they understood that they are taking part just for the ticks in the lists. But now everything was totally changed. Now the suppliers are happily coming to us. They understand what should be done to be competitive at ours. Yes, we have the high threshold, we have the very high requirement, but they can see and they understand it. We show them the enterprise, we give them the opportunity to communicate with the experts who are using the equipment and vehicles, with the technical staff. They can see our openness, they understand how the tender procedures are held. They understand how the comparison, the selection of the supply is done, how we compare, how we calculate the total cost of ownership. So this communication with the market gave us the competitive environment. This is the transparent and totally clear communication with technical experts, which brought to the outcome which we get in the end. And what gave us this advantage? In the first tender procedure, we acknowledged when we communicated with those who are using these vehicles directly, it was also included into the strategy as one of the main postulates we are still using, because with the users of the equipment, we could see real improvements which can be embedded in the strategy, which can be as the basis, a foundation, or which can optimize the losses or the expenses of the enterprise. What other lessons did we take? There shouldn't be chaos in the team. There should be people who definitely are responsible for something, and they have some responsibility spheres of the tasks which are totally separate and totally precise. And the leader is the category manager in the team. I'm grateful to my category management. This is what he deserves mostly in the strategy. I successfully PR it at lots of workshops because it's really a very nice piece of job. And this is the result, which is the start, the beginning for all of the rest of category management, which went on and which we are having now. That is why it's so important who is leading, and it is so important how we've separated the tasks and the responsibility spheres. This is the key one. This is what we taught, because first we began with, well, I would say relative chaos, but then we totally reflected it in our category strategy, and then it worked. What else? What are the lessons taken? First and foremost, we did not pay attention to the terms of reference, only developing the category strategy more and more and implementing into the process. And we understood, delving deeper into the process, we understood that it is so important to analyze the terms of reference. And this is the first point which the category management pays attention to, because this is the second log when we say you should work with the specifications. There's lots of money there, work with it. Get rid of the extra one, add the one you need. This is the money, and the speaker vanished. I do apologize. This is the money which is on the surface. You can just take it and use it. And the last, what I mentioned, when we wrote down the first strategy of the first year, when we signed it, when we issued it, my employee came with the ideas, what needs to be done in the category strategy, what we forgot to add, and what we need to include. So do not forget that this is not just the stable document, it is very dynamic, and it always needs and can be more relevant because the needs of the market are changing, because the needs of the company are changing, because the positioning and the strategy of the company is changing. I even reminded myself one more important lesson. You should not forget that your category strategy cannot just live separately from your procurement strategy, and your procurement strategy cannot be separate from the strategy of the enterprise. If it is living totally separated, disconnected, not aligned, those are just the documents which are written down, and I'm not sure that they will lead to certain results at the enterprise. So when we create the category strategy, we always consider what the enterprise needs, which strategy is needed by the enterprise for the next 3 to 5 years. What can the procurement do during those 3 to 5 years? What's the strategy of the procurement? And then considering that, we are looking what, with the help of the category strategy, can be done in 3 to 5 years to implement the strategy of the business, the strategy of the procurement. That's it from me. I'm ready to answer your questions.
Okay, so over to our translator. I believe we've had some comments through on the chat. Maybe you could help us just to translate that. And obviously our delegates are on the call. So if the delegates have questions, how do we wish them to engage with the speaker, Mr. Translator? Do we ask them to put their hand up or just come straight in?
Stephen, we don't see all the delegates. We can only answer their questions, which are written in the 3 languages, Russian, Ukrainian, or English.
Right.
In this case, we can answer the questions.
So they need to come through the chat, Marina.
Okay, so Marina will read them out loud and the interpreter will interpret. First of all, I'd like to thank Alena. Thank you so much that you're sharing the experience. It's incredibly important because the mostly widely spread question is how it is done. How can it be done? The theory is well taught already, but how can it be implemented in reality is the most complicated question. So let us speak now practically. There will be questions about practice first, and then we will open the secret how we help the people in the practical part. So the question to Alena: who and how adopted the category strategy? And the second question: are you calculating TCO, the total cost of ownership, for which period, for how long? I will begin with the latter. The TCO, which we calculate at the moment when we take the decision for the comparison of the proposals, and there is the TCO, which we calculate in fact factually. It is calculated for the life cycle of the use of the unit of equipment. If it's the trucker, for instance, this is 4 years. If any other vehicles or equipments, 5 years. The question who was adopted and how adopted the category strategy. At our enterprises, we have a standard which is called the management of categories, and it is written there who is taking the decision. In fact, those are the members of the tender committee, and they are adopted by the approval should be done by the CEO. So this is the final signature of the category strategy, which is the part of the strategy of the company, right? Yes. The CEO is signing it with those, with the technical experts, the financiers, and now we have the lawyers already, the security guys, and we, the procurers. Okay, thank you, buyers, thank you. And we have the second question from Richard Russell, and it's in English. So Stephen, I would ask you to read it out loud and the interpreter will interpret.
So thanks, Richard, for the question. And Richard thanks you for the great story, Alena. And he asks you, would you say that all your technical experts are willing to collaborate with procurement, or maybe just some? So is everybody willing to collaborate or just some?
Смотрите,
Well, look, if we take the enterprise where we created the strategy, let us take it before. No, not everybody. I would say nobody would. But now, without my employee, cannot be taken a single decision. My employee is involved in lots of processes. So we are the partners for them, not the ones they don't want to communicate with. We deserved such a status during those 4 years of hard work of the implementation of category strategy and the outcomes which we showed. When we showed the outcomes that we are not against you, we are together with you, we are for the enterprise. We now were perceived as partners finally. There are some other enterprises where we have not achieved such a synergy with technical experts. So they are not that happy to see us. They don't love us that well, but we need to be objective. We need to deserve still. Alena, can you say that the way to this real partnership between the customers, the technical experts and the procurers, the buyers, is through the category management? Partially. Partly, because first, Marina, as I said, everything is done through the creation of trust and communication between the people. Category management helps. Yes, I totally agree. Helps with the tools. It helps this communication to be more comprehensible, transparent, and structured. It is not the bridge which connects, because for me the bridge which connects is just communication. It is just expertise, the knowledge and the experience, but without the toolkit, without the precise and clear structured approach, it is not that easy to communicate. So category management definitely helps to do it. Thank you so much. The question in Russian, I will read it out loud from Pavlo. Who is the initiator of the adoption of the strategy? The technical experts are not that readily taking the changes. That is why you should substantiate its necessity. Who is the initiator? Well, the leader of this process of the category management in my enterprises was me. And then later, the adoption of this decision was done at lots of levels, and then we needed to bring it to other levels. And in this way, we initiated the whole implementation process. And further on, there was no opportunity not to take this way or to take it, because it was already adopted. It was already the way of the development of the procurement of the company. I would like to add, first, you said the word and the wish to implement category management in the company. So the word was always the first one, and this is the long process of the training for the buyers, for the procurers, and then together with that team, you are the initiators of the development of this category strategy and its adoption, right? Yes, right, Marina. We had a very long way, and we involved not only the procurers and the buyers, but also the leaders, the top managers before the approval, before the adoption of this way and even of this notion. We conducted the training for the top leaders, for the superiors at my companies and enterprises. True. And also you've involved the representatives of security in your training, yes, and some of the internal customers, yes, as far as I remember. Okay, let's move on. We have the question from Olga. Which tools of category management do you use? Well, I am giving the floor to you, but I don't think that we shall tell about all of the tools now. But how will you answer this question still? Well, it's not that easy to answer because there are lots of those tools we are using stage by stage. 7 stages plus 0 stage, which we invented with Marina, 8 stages of category management. With each set of the tools were used. This is the risk matrix, the Kralic matrix, the chessboard, if you've heard about it. That is the tools on analysis of expenses. There are lots of them, there are a multitude of them. In each category strategy, you're selecting different tools, which you can find out. Yes, PESEL, 5S, yes, SWOT analysis, lots of them. The matrix of alternatives. My colleagues will understand me. I can speak about that for hours, we know that. Yes, not hours, but days, days. Well, days or hours and nights. And Stephen, maybe you could add anything about the tools? Maybe you can totally do it in a different way.
Yeah, I think you've gone through pretty much a very comprehensive list of the tools. The one that I wanted just to remind people about, because it was in my introduction, was something like PESEL or Steeple, where we're just looking at the macro environment and we're thinking about what, and you've already said this, Alena, you've already said what happens tomorrow, the future, thinking ahead. You know, this is not something we do, shall we say, in a reactive way. So being proactive. The only other tool, I mean, you've already mentioned the favorite tool, CrowdCheck, of course, but I just wanted to add, don't forget in the forecasting of demand and looking ahead to try to anticipate some of the political, some of the economic, some of the social changes that we all deal with every day now, you know, to make people aware of the tool, either PESEL or Steeple.
Yes, thank you so much. And before we get back to the questions which are listed here, I'd like to add that the 0 stage, which Alena has mentioned, when we create the matrix of stakeholders management, this is one of the key points you can't deal without. Okay. The question again from Andrei, as far as I understand, do I understand correctly that when you develop and approve the strategy, you choose the supplier within the strategy for the period of 4 to 5 years, considering the calculation period of TCO? Well, not exactly. We are not choosing the supplier from the perspective how he or she is economically profitable as of today, because the cycle of 4 to 5 years will be over in 2022, 2023. So when we are over with this cycle of TCO calculation, we will understand which models are for sure competitive and in which way of services we are implementing it is the best. Thank you. And the last question by Richard, would you please read it out loud? Stephen, I would ask you to read it out loud. The question from Richard Russell again, and then we'll come to the next speaker.
Okay, so Alena, Richard Russell again is asking you, he's saying that you're very charismatic. Richard is obviously a big fan of yours already. And he's saying that you're also probably, we would say, a force of nature. So a strong leader, you have good leadership skills. And Richard's question is really, if you move away from this role, do you think that there will be a void? Do you think that maybe the momentum will stop if you are not driving it? Do you think there's enough there to sustain category management going forward if it's not you and it's somebody else?
Я могу отвечать?
Can I answer? Yes. Thank
Sorry,
you
yes,
so
please,
much.
yeah.
Thank you so much. It's so pleasant to hear those compliments. So answering your question, I will be honest with you. So far, we need to do something else for the system to work properly. But I do hope that during the next year, year and a half, we will create the whole system that it will be working in spite of whether I'm the leader or not, because those are the launched processes and people are thinking in the proper way, they're working in this way. So if we create the whole system, it's so important to have the leader in the beginning, to launch the system, to create it. But the leader is not that nice if he or she is leaving and then the system is failing. I don't want to be a nice, I want to be a nice leader, so the system should work after me. Okay, thank you, I totally support you. And yes, this is a lot about leadership, but the system should be working without the leader as well. This is the main mission of the leader, in fact. So we've got more questions, but let us now read them out loud, and then we should join John. So the last question, and I will answer it, if you allow me. Can we get acquainted with your work or the outcomes of your work where you had some savings of the special equipment? What Alena has shown today is done thanks to the permission, the corporate permission to show those results. Of course, they are not that open. Alena cannot show everything. And secondly, we invite you to our trainings where we will totally lead you and totally train you what should be done, how we should create the strategy. We'll provide you lots of prompts. And for 3 days, we will share all of our developments, Alena's and mine. I've got lots of customers and clients for whom we created category strategies, and we will show how we should do it in the best way to avoid mistakes and to be successful. And I'd like to say that our company is doing lots of projects in category management, but also we are conducting trainings. And we'd like to invite all of the participants and delegates who are interested in this topic. Our open program this year will be only one devoted to category management. We used to have more of them during the previous years. The open training will be from the 15th to 17th of July. And everybody who's present here and registered at this webinar will get the special promo code. I will write it down now, and this promo code, and it will be sent out in the letters. With the help of this promo code, you will be able to get a really pleasant and substantial discount for this workshop on category management. The discount is working up to the 25th of March, and I do hope that you will be able to use it. And now I give the floor to John and Stephen, if you want to add anything, in fact, please, the floor is always yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that was the first of our speakers, and already we've had a very high energy. We had a very engaging and charismatic speaker, which certainly brought out a number of questions and a number of engagement with delegates. So thank you very much for that. So we now turn to our next speaker, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Category Management in Action with Mr. John Thompson. John has over 25 years experience in global category management with a proven track record of success and delivery. By thinking globally, then acting locally, John combines these skills with the practices learned across different sectors and categories. And John delivers significant cost savings, as well as innovation and service improvement. John has worked in many sectors, including financial services, medical, aerospace, charity, construction, government, and in particular, rail, including the major UK rail infrastructure, High Speed 2. The estimated cost of that project is between 80 and 88 billion. So a very significant piece of work. John is an exponent of the transferable nature of procurement skills that drive improvement in all industries. John is a procurement and supply chain expert with deep hands-on experience, and that's something which I know John wants to talk about and impart to you, give you insight into how he's gone about category management in his role. John's also held in high regard for his engaging presentations. John holds an MBA and is a member of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. So without further ado, hand you over to Mr. John Thompson.
Thank you very much, Steve. Let me just make sure that you can see my screen. So can you, let's get this working then.
Yeah, we've got that.
Right. So can everybody see that now?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. As Steve has spoken to you, my name is John Thompson, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. Today, I'm going to share my experiences of category management with you and try to demonstrate how this change management process can be effective in the largest of organisations. So today, I'm going to use the example of fleet management, or some of you may know it as the provision of company vehicles. So you can see the agenda I have before you. So first of all, I'm going to speak about the challenge. So what was the size and the scope of my task and my experience of the organisation at that point. I'm then going to speak to you about what makes an effective category strategy. And I'm going to identify the three main elements of this and show you how when they are brought together, your strategy will be successful. I'm going to go through the key stages of category management, and I know that these vary across different organisations, but essentially this is a mirror of Kotter's change management process, and it will help you to identify, enable and embed change management within your organisations. I'm then going to speak to you about change management. So, the levers of change. These are the blockers and enablers that category management will allow you to surface and then to move past them within your particular organisations. And then finally, I'm going to speak to you about something called Today, Tomorrow. And this really is a summary of where we started in the process and where we ended up. And it really is a wrap up which shows you how using category management, the blockers of change are removed and significant benefit can be delivered to your organisation. So this first slide talks about the challenge. So picture, if you will, a lovely sunny day in leafy Oxfordshire. I drive my car into the car park of Becton Dickinson on my first day in the organisation. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, BD is one of the largest medical technology companies in the world. They have a turnover of $5 billion a year with 150,000 employees, and they are a business that's been in operation for the last 150 years. So the first question of my new boss when I worked into the job was, John, what do you know about the category of fleet? My response, absolutely nothing. Congratulations, my boss says to me, you are now the category manager for fleet across Europe. Go figure, as the Americans love to say. So basically, what fleet looked like across Europe at the time, there were 17 countries, there were 14 different fleet policies, 24 different suppliers, and it was a cost of $19 million a year. So, as I've said to you earlier, on my first day, I knew nothing about fleet, but what I did know was about category management. And using category management, I was able to meet the objectives of identifying opportunities for savings and service improvement. So this slide really talks about an effective category management strategy. So there are many different definitions of what category management is, and you will see this on the right-hand side of the screen. But for me, the essential drivers of category management are strategy, stakeholders, and savings or service indeed. So the first of our S's is strategy. So this is basically facts and data, or key pieces of information on the current state of your category. This data comes from a number of sources, such as your finance department. It may come from the internet, and a really good source of where you're spending your money is around your suppliers. So strategy also requires academic rigor. So this is a set of tried and tested practices which allow you to interpret the data that you have before you and change the situation that you're in. And so the speaker before me spoke about a number of category academic disciplines, but some of the examples that I'm talking about is supplier segmentation, supplier preferencing, and also cost benefit activities. So within your strategy, you also need short, medium and long-term goals. So this is about your strategy has to actually deliver something, because if your strategy isn't going to deliver, there's not really a lot of point undertaking it. And the third element of strategy is around practical experience. So there's no substitute for practical experience, and you need to know which of the many tactics that category management offers you, what works and what doesn't in different situations. So the next S that I'm going to talk about to you is stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are key to an effective category strategy. You really need to understand the needs of your stakeholders and bring them on a journey of discovery and success with you. Otherwise, your strategy is doomed to fail. It's about understanding the issues that make their life difficult and offering them constructive solutions. There's also a need to understand who your stakeholders are, who are the people can help change your strategy, and get those people brought into your strategic process. Now, the final S is about, I call it savings or service. Now, the savings that you're going to deliver or the service improvements that you're going to deliver, these vary greatly depending on the needs of your stakeholders and the particular strategies that you're going to adopt. It's about giving your stakeholders what they want and what they need, what you actually think that not what you think they actually want. So when you combined these three S's, this is your key to success. And you'll see the quotation from the European Director of Reward and Recognition for BD, when it shows you what success looks like when the three elements of these are successfully combined. Now, the next slide is the key stages of category management. This slide shows you how change is identified, implemented, and embedded across your category strategies. So category management is, in its essence, is a change management process. You can't ignore these steps and you can't miss them out, because if you do, you will end up disappointing your stakeholders and losing credibility and value. So the stages that I've identified in this slide, and you'll see that many of them, they differ from different types of organizations. They're based around identifying and building support for the change management and reducing resistance to the strategic sourcing process. So key to this process is the identifications of quick wins throughout the process. So in all of the stages of your process, it's really important to have strategic wins, but also quick wins, because this keeps your team and your stakeholders motivated to carry on their journey. So for me, the key principle of category management are things like this. So we talk about process thinking. So all of the stages of this process are important. It's very much a customer-driven focus, meeting the needs of your stakeholders. Category management is all about facts and data, because you can't argue with facts and data, and this is what gives people confidence in your strategy. It's also about the elimination of waste as you go along this journey. And at every stage of this process, there is what I call the plan, do, check, act. You keep improving on what you're doing, and you keep reviewing every stage of this process so that you find out what you learn, and then you find out what you can do better in the next stage. And finally, the point of these strategies is they should be transformational. You're taking people on a journey, and if that's successful, is transformational in giving savings and service improvements, the next time these people have an issue, they're going to invite you back to the table. So here I've identified some of what I call the levers and the blockers of change. So every situation in every category, in every business is different. But using the tools of category management, this allows you to surface the blockers of change and enables you to identify the levers of change that you can pull to help you deliver your desired transformation. That said, some of the blockers and enablers that I've identified here are common in many situations. So here, things like, if we talk about blockers, this is poor communication strategy. As the last speaker alluded, it's all about communication. It's about having a clear, effective strategy and how you communicate that strategy. It's also about identifying cultural bias. So different organizations have got long histories of doing particular activities, and it's about identifying what these biases are and identifying new ways to help them move on to a different set of outcomes. It's important to identify what the levers of change are. So this is the availability of good data that you have, which I spoke about earlier. It's about finding a strong cross-functional team. So the team that I had included members of the HR leadership team. They had the sales and marketing directors of each country that we worked in, and of course it was led by the procurement team, which was myself. But it's also important to have a strong and committed sponsor. So once you have that strong and committed sponsor who's bought into your strategy, then they will act as the ambassador for your strategy when sharing it throughout your organization. So this slide talks about is what I call today and tomorrow. So at the start of the category management that I lead, I always identify the places where we are, but I also ask my team to identify where they want to go at the end of this process. So this is important because it shows them what they're working towards, and it focuses them on the prize. It focuses them on the major strategic prize, but at the same time, as I spoke about earlier, it identifies the quick wins that along the journey are going to lead them on this process. So some of the things we talked about where we started, we talked about monthly rental fees for our vehicles. So this is what we paid every month for the vehicles that we used. And by the end of the process, we adopted a total cost of ownership model, which you spoke about from the last speaker. We had this thing called a user chooser mark, which basically meant that you could basically choose any company vehicle what you wanted, but where we ended up with 3 regional brands that we used across the whole of our 17 European countries. We identified, so because of this disparate policy that we had with our brands, we were spending $19 million a year on fleet, but we weren't getting any money back. But as a result of our category strategies, we were able to secure rebates of around $300,000 a year from the manufacturers that we worked with. When we started our process, we found that the company car allowance was 25% above the market rate. So by doing this market analysis, which we talked about earlier, we identified that we brought our car allowance in line with the market. So as a result of this category strategy, we were able to save $3.1 million over a 3-year period. And we moved to a best-in-class fleet policy where we were able to attract and retain high-performing staff across our businesses. Instead of our fleet becoming a cost to our company, we enabled it to become a resource, so it attracted the brightest and best talent to our organisation. Okay, so that's my presentation about category management in action, and now I'd be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you, John. And already the questions are coming in. So that was a great presentation, and already it sparked off some thoughts from people. So the first question for you that I have is, you know that saying, it's different here. John, you can't go bringing your standard approach into this part of the business because it's different. And the question relates to that when it says, was your category strategy a global one? And I think we know the answer to that, but how was it how was it received and integrated in different countries, which have different geographical situations as well as judicial requirements? So it's that notion of it's different in the US or it's different in the Ukraine. How do we, smooth that out and deal with those challenges around the globe?
Okay, well, yes, when I spoke to the various functional heads across the 17 countries of Europe, all of them said that their particular markets or their particular strategy was different. But where we were able to bring success was we were able to identify a European-wide fleet policy. So working with the HR leadership team, we identified a set of fundamental principles that were to apply across all of our 17 countries. But at the same time, we identified regional variations that reflected the local conditions of each market.
Okay. Can you just probably elaborate a little bit? Certainly, from my memory, I always recollect whenever we went stateside, there was quite a lot of pro-American companies that they wanted to continue to use, and they didn't want necessarily a European company. What were some of the challenges that you maybe came across?
That's a very good point, Steve. So when I started at BD, my first remit was European category manager. So the category management activity that I identified for you here is simply a European-wide strategy. And built on the success of that European strategy, I was then promoted to global category manager. And what I identified from this was that the market for fleet within Europe is very different to the market in the US, and is very different to the markets of Asia. So working on this principle of global, acting global but thinking local, the idea was to develop regional fleet strategies but look to areas where we were able to harmonize. a particular example of this was in Europe, we used a company called ALD Automotive. We were also able to partner with their US parent company, which is a company called Wheels. Now, using that partnership, we were able to develop a database which covered the 19,000 vehicles that we had across the US, with I think the 1,700 or 17,000 vehicles that we had across Europe. So we were able to use those synergies to collate our data and manipulate our data, but at the same time implement very different regional strategies.
Yeah, but always thinking about the, shall we say, the common good, as you say, thinking globally.
Yeah,
we've got maybe Debbie, you could ask John the question.
Yeah, sure. John, I was just wondering, with a strategy for fleet, obviously the marketplace is going to change and there's going to be technology driven changes in the vehicles that you're buying and environmental regulations. So how far into the future does your strategy look to plan, and sort of, you know, how did you incorporate future changes?
Okay, so I think that is a really good question, and I'll give you an example, because the strategy that we originally developed was a 5-year period, and the reason why we wanted to do that was because when we started the strategy, we had lots and lots and lots of different suppliers. Now, as you'll know, you can't just cancel a lease and then provide somebody with a new company car. You have to let all of the leases tail off over the period of each of these leases. So the strategy was that over a 4 or 5 year period, all of the leases that we currently had would tail off and be picked up by the new supplier. And so at the end of that period, all of the fleet that we had in the US and in Europe would be all with one supplier, so that the next time we delivered our strategy, we would have a strategy that incorporated all of our data and all of our fleet, so it would make the next building blocks of our strategy that much clearer, because we had all that information in one place. So that's the first point. And the second point was that, I'm happy to admit this happened when we first designed our strategy. There was a lot of talk across the globe about the use of diesel engines. So basically, it was identified that at that period of time, diesel engines were the way to go for all types of vehicles, and there was reams and reams of scientific data which basically said, make sure you put all your cars and make them all diesel. Now, so that was the strategy we adopted. So we basically said, we're not going to have petrol, the whole of our BD fleet, we're not going to have petrol cars. They're all going to be diesel. So having made that change to a European-wide edict that we would have diesel vehicles, well, then of course the picture changed, and then 2 years later the data said no, don't have diesel cars. So so by having a strategy that's the medium-term strategy, it allows you to identify changing technology and adjust your strategy accordingly.
Okay. So, John, I have millions of questions for you, but sadly, we're starting to, time will be against us. So I'm going to invite Marina just to say to her, do you have a question for John on your side? And then
Thank you so much, John. It's a very interesting introduction, and one of my favorite categories, because you can really do a lot in it. In this category, there are lots of tools, so all of this diversity can lead to lots of value and money for the company, for the business, and for the stakeholders. I would like to ask you to elaborate on what you just mentioned, but in fact it's so important. In my opinion, we cannot deal without that. And not a single strategy and category management can be successful without it. This is the loyal and committed sponsor you were mentioning. The person who will promote and help to move on, to push this idea, and to the person who will help with his or her decisions to give the green light for the strategy. Could you elaborate how you involved the sponsors and who was your sponsor in the company of BND?
Okay, so yes, I absolutely agree with your point. So as I spoke to at the start of my presentation, it was my first day at the company, and I was suddenly given this massive change management strategy to deliver. So what I identified was that this isn't something that procurement can do on its own. This is something that the business needs to want to do. And so my task in this, one of the first tasks that I had, was to identify the European leader of recruitment and reward and to sell to him a particular strategy. So what I basically went, and it was a chap called Mike, and I said, Mike, what are your problems around company cars? So Mike basically wrote my strategy for me. He told me all the problems that he had. He told me all the issues that he wanted to get solved. And he introduced, and basically said, these are my issues, go find me a strategy. And from that, it becomes very simple. You compare your problems with the best of what the market has to offer. And so the problems are out there in the market. The answers to your problems are out there in the market. You just have to go out and identify them and then weave them into a strategy that you can roll out across a number of countries.
Okay, but who was the sponsor? Who was your sponsor? So the sponsor was your leader, your direct leader?
My sponsor was the global head of HR in Europe. So the chap who was responsible for recruiting the European staff and rewarding them. And don't forget, company cars are also part of that reward package. He wanted me to identify savings and service improvement in the $19 million a year that he spent on company vehicles. So it wasn't a procurement-led strategy, it was a human resources-led strategy.
Got it. Thank you so much. So in fact, I find out that the sponsor was your main internal customer, right?
Yes. And I also delivered, while I was at Becton Dickinson, I also delivered a $22 million project across marketing, a marketing spend across Europe. And again, it was about identifying the leader of the European marketing category, the leader of the European Marketing Council, and finding out what his problems were and delivering a market-led strategy.
Got it. Thank you so much. It's really so interesting, especially considering the experience of the relationship with the sponsors and the stakeholders. That's really an important point. Thank you so much. Okay, we don't have any questions so far. We can see the words of gratitude in the chat directly to the hosts and to us in the personal messages. We are also really grateful to our participants and delegates and to everybody who joined us today. John and Debbie, do you have anything to add or maybe to say about Steve, maybe you would like to add something about John's speech, and I think that we should conclude.
Okay, I just wanted to say it was very powerful, John, when you mentioned that how transferable category management is. And in fact, that you can use it regardless of, in fact, something you've never done before. And I thought that was incredibly powerful because people can be very shy and very scared about getting into shall we call it the marketing spend or the HR agencies if you've never done it before. And of course, you know, the way to do that is with category management skills. It gives you those standard building blocks to get started. And I certainly, my experience was at the Olympic Games, where we were negotiating with artists and performers and, you know, sports equipment, stuff we'd never done before. I'd never done before. And it was category management that helped me follow that, you know, the steps to get me into things I'd never come across before and be successful at it. So, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to back that up, Steve. It's like, you know, I spent, you know, category management as a, you know, I've worked in a number of industries. I've bought space rockets and put satellites in orbit. I bought fleet, and I bought marketing, and I've done building projects. But, you know, and when I've done all of these particular projects, I wasn't an expert in the particular market, but using the tools of category management, I was able to start with some basic principles that I outlined in my presentation, and it very quickly enables you to get a complete overview of what that market is, and most importantly, to identify the problems to any identify the solutions to any particular problems that you may have. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So my thank yous extend to, of course, the speakers that have been with us today. Both of them were hugely engaging and entertaining, and gave us lots of insights and information, which I'm absolutely sure in real life are going to be very beneficial. My thank you to working with our translators. Thank you very much. I don't know how you do it, but you do an amazing job. And of course, my thank you to the experts and to Marina at IPSM. So we have another event we're going to do. This one was hugely subscribed, and we were absolutely delighted with that. So we're going to do another one, and I think the next one, Marina, is outsourcing in April.
Yes, outsourcing, the topic of outsourcing and how it can be used in the procurement, outsourcing of the procurement, in fact. The event will be held on the 15th of April. We are ready to it. We'll announce it as soon as possible, and the speakers as well. And we will be happy if you register for our further events. We'll have 3 more events. The next one will be about outsourcing in May, and in June we'll have events which we'll tell about later. And also I'd like to mention that we, IPSM company and Procurement Central company, we are happily answering any of your questions, any of your requests. We are conducting corporate trainings and the trainings in the open format. It may be, well, even live in Ukraine and online, of course, if you wish. We've got huge experience in online events last year in various formats. And I think that, Stephen, you are conducting successful online events for different clients and customers for different requests.
Indeed,
yes.
Indeed. I mean, maybe one day, I know John has been to Kiev, so...
Yes, lovely part of the world, lovely part of the world.
And so I'm keeping my fingers crossed one day, Marina, that I will also travel there. But until then, it's going to be virtual. And again, thank you to everybody who's dialed in today. We've really enjoyed listening and engaging with each other. And I hope everybody has enjoyed listening.
Yes, and see you soon. And we are waiting for you for the workshop on the 15th to 17th of July in Kiev. This will be a live training. The discount and the promo code are in the chat, and also we'll send it out. And we see you. Goodbye. See you soon.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much that you joined us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.